A man was sleeping peacefully in his hibernation pod when a piercing alarm suddenly jolted him awake. Almost immediately, his body was rapidly covered by a spacesuit made of nanotechnology. But before the helmet could fully form, his hibernation pod was ejected straight into space. Looking back, he saw the main ship exploding after being hit by meteorites. All the astronauts were being shot toward an unknown planet. Jess's hibernation pod plummeted at breakneck speed. Without his helmet, he began suffocating. Just as he was about to pass out, the emergency system kicked in and the helmet finally finished forming. However, they were falling too fast. The pod's surface temperature was dangerously high, and hibernation pods around him were exploding one after another. Luckily, once they entered the atmosphere, the freezing cold brought the temperature back to normal. But the fuel system malfunctioned as a result, and the powerless hibernation pod crashed straight into the ground. Although the pod was tough enough to survive the impact, as soon as Jess crawled out, the ground beneath him gave way. He tumbled back into the hibernation pod, which had flipped over and torn his spacesuit in the process. Oxygen began leaking out rapidly. Terrified, Jess quickly patched the tear with sealant, but his suit now only had 40% oxygen left. Just when Jess was losing hope, several bright lights in the distance caught his attention. Realizing these might be distress signals from his crewmates, he immediately headed toward them, constantly calling for help over the radio. But no one responded. Soon he reached the first light source, wreckage from the main ship and a hibernation pod. Jess rushed over to check, only to discover in horror that his crewmate inside was already dead. The oxygen pack in the hibernation pod was also damaged and unusable. With no choice, he continued toward the next light source, completely missing the two bloody, terrifying claw marks on the pod. When he reached the next light source, he was relieved to find a living crewmate. Mike was busy installing communication equipment to contact Earth. Jess felt overjoyed, but Mike delivered the brutal truth: it would take 8 months for the signal to reach Earth, and rescue wouldn't arrive for at least 2 years. Still, this equipment was their only hope. Just as the two men were installing the device, a dark shadow suddenly swooped down and carried Mike away. When Jess turned around, Mike was gone. He began shouting Mike's name, but got no response. His oxygen was now down to 30%. Just as anxiety was setting in, a woman's voice came through the communication channel. Ella claimed to be the ship's administrator, saying she was trapped under a boulder and couldn't escape. She offered to trade oxygen for Jess's rescue. Jess decided to risk it and save her. While traveling at night, he noticed many circular footprints on the ground leading to a cave. Low growling sounds echoed from the darkness. Suddenly, his tracker showed multiple astronauts converging on his location, but he couldn't see anyone. Jess had the system connect to those trackers and discovered the signals were coming from just ahead. He threw out a flare for light, only to see a terrifying monster. All the astronauts had been devoured. Their trackers were now inside the alien creature's belly.